In this video, I'm going to give you an overview of the content of a Flames scenario. I have gone to my launcher and I've started Forge, clicked on the Forge icon. I'm going to load or log in as my individual Flames user. You should always use your own user. And I'm going to go open again the scenario that is owned by the Flames example user. And I'm going to open up this single shooter scenario. I'm not going to log in as that user. I'm going to stay logged in as my own user so I don't inadvertently modify the example data sets, the example scenario data. And the first thing that I want to do when I'm going to actually edit a scenario and make changes to it is I want to make my own copy of that scenario. So we're going to do that right now. And we're going to assume in successive videos that you've already completed this step. So I have the scenario open, but you'll notice that it doesn't say Flames examples. It says that I own it. I only have this scenario data set loaded in memory, so I need to save it to the database. And when I do that, it's going to ask me for the name because it's going to be a data set that I own. I can leave the name the same as the one that I just opened, or I can change the name. I'm going to leave it the same as what I opened. So now I've saved this data set. So the next time I run Forge, I'll have this scenario that I own available that I can open. So the first thing I want to point out is that, and this is probably the most important thing to get started with, is that all of the data in a given Flames scenario is stored in data sets. Data set is the basic unit of storage in the Flames scenario database. The Flames scenario database is a set of files and folders normally in your project folder that are managed by the Flames scenario database manager that store all the content of your scenario. It's very rare that there'll ever be any content that's not in the database folder. The files in that folder are just that. They're just a bunch of individual files, but we refer to those files as data sets. So there's a one-to-one correlation between a data set and a file. So this particular scenario has lots of data sets loaded. So if I go to the Manage Data Sets window, it's going to show me all the data sets that are loaded in this particular scenario. So I'm going to spend a couple of minutes talking about data sets at a very high level. There's more information on this in a successive video. The point here to understand is that the scenario itself, the single shooter scenario, that is actually itself a data set, and it contains no scenario data. Scenario data sets just list the data sets that are part of the scenario. So this particular single shooter scenario data set lists the names and the owners of all these data sets and the types of all these data sets. So when I load the single shooter scenario data set, or just for short, I'll say single shooter scenario, it will look at that data set, figure out all the data sets that are in there, and it will load them. So these data sets are, again, there's a one-to-one correlation between a data set and a file. But data sets are special. They have lots of special properties, and they have a special format and lots of different things about them that make them much more powerful and much more suitable for storing scenario data. Again, that's managed by the Flames Scenario Database Manager. That's software that's part of Flames that we wrote. We can't find a third-party database management system that can do for us the things that we do in our database manager. It's one of the very important features in Flames, and you'll learn more about that in successive videos. Each data set has a name. The name can contain spaces and special characters. Each data set is owned by an individual Flames user, and each data set has a type. That type indicates the type of data that is stored in a data set. We don't mix up types in a given data set. Each data set only stores one type of object. So you can see at this point, all these data sets are owned by this example user. Data sets are generally shared among multiple scenarios. So we now know of two scenarios that use these exact same data sets. The one that I created here that's owned by me, and the original one that's owned by the Flames 21 examples, which is the one that I opened at the beginning of this tutorial. Those scenarios share the exact same data. In fact, they are identical except for the fact that they have a different scenario data set that lists the data set. These are all the same data sets. very, very common for data sets to be shared among multiple scenarios. In fact, data sets in the Flames database are scenario independent. They don't have a scenario affiliation. It's the scenario data set that includes them in a particular scenario. So you can see all these different types of objects right here, which is also the types of data sets. I'm going to close this window now, and I'm going to show you another place where we see those types of objects listed. I'm going to open up the Scenario Explorer. This Scenario Explorer lists all the objects that are loaded in this particular scenario. So it's not listing data sets, it's listing the objects that are loaded out of those data sets. And I'm going to expand parts of this thing in here real quick to show you there's a lot of different things loaded. And then underneath here, there's a bunch of things loaded. And I could expand all these things. There's a bunch of objects loaded. It's a bunch of different objects. You'll notice these main types. Well, you may not notice this, but if you went back and looked, you would see that these main types of objects at the first or second level in the hierarchy are the same as the types of data sets. So we organize the objects in memory along the same types as the way that they're stored in data sets. The hierarchy in this Scenario Explorer is the same as the hierarchy in the menus. So you can see the units menu. I've got a units menu. I've got a parameters menu. If I expand that, I've got submenus here. Underneath equipment, I have submenus. The entries in these sets of menus are very similar to the entries that we see in this hierarchy. Each type of object has an individual window that is used to edit that type of object. So for example, if I go to the units window, or I go to units, which is the window that I already have up right here, I can see there's 2 unit objects in this scenario. And if that window was closed when I first opened the scenario, I can double click on or just single click on a unit and it'll open up the units window. If I go to, say, the sensors window or the platforms, or the sensor entry here in the tree, and I click on one of these objects, it'll open up the window that is used to edit those objects. So every type of object has its own type of data set. Every type of object has its own window for editing the objects of that type. And that's true universally throughout Flames. We'll talk more about how to edit objects in another video, but I want to just point out here that in Flames, we edit all objects through the Flames graphical user interface. So you click on a given object and you can see its graphical user interface and you can edit its parameters. We don't have any text files that are behind the scenes that you have to edit by hand. At Turning, to us, that's an anathema. There should never be files like that are out there, or if they are, it should be very, very unusual that they're there. All the data of a Flames scenario can all be edited through the graphical user interface, either of Forge, which is most of it, or through a third party, a separate application. Like, for example, icons are edited in the icon editor, but they're edited with the graphical user interface, they're stored in the Flames database, and they're loaded in Forge. In other videos, we will spend a lot of time talking about editing individual parameters, and we'll talk about all these different types of objects. But again, all I want to do at this point is give you an overview of how scenario data is organized and what the overall types of objects are in a scenario and introduction to data sets. That's all I want to tell you about this. Thank you for watching, and thank you for using Flames.